Hello, welcome to Revelation Ministries. I am Joseph Fidana. Today, in this video, I will discuss Genesis 1-2, a scripture that has been misunderstood and misinterpreted over the centuries for lack of a revelation of the scripture. As I've always said, spiritual scripture in the Bible cannot be explained except by a revelation. But many theologians have interpreted this scripture without a revelation. And by that they have erred greatly. Genesis 1:2 says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the waters." Now, until Genesis 1:2, nothing was said about water. We were not told anywhere in Scripture how God created or made water. Water suddenly appears in Genesis 1:2. You will not find how water was made anywhere in Scripture. Water has been in heaven before the earth was made. There was water in heaven. The water of life was in heaven. The water of life was in heaven. Now we see in Revelations, we see in Revelation 22 verse 1. Revelation 22 verse 1 says, "And God showed me a pure water of life, as clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb." Pure water of life, proceeding out of the throne of God in heaven. This was the waters that Genesis 1:2 is talking about. In any case, theologians have interpreted Genesis 1:2 to mean that the Spirit of God hovered over the seas here on earth. This explanation cannot be further from the truth, because Genesis 1:2, as at the time of Genesis 1:2, the earth had not yet been made. The earth was made in Genesis 1:9 and 10. The Spirit of God could therefore not have hovered over the seas on earth when the earth had not yet been made. Simply put, Genesis 1:2 has been misinterpreted for lack of a revelation. Now, Genesis 1:2 was not an act of creation. Genesis 1:2 was simply a prophecy concerning the earth when it will be made. It was a prophecy concerning the earth before it was made. That when it will be made, there will be darkness upon the face of the earth. It will be empty, void. It will be empty, and there will be chaos on the face of the earth. Darkness in Genesis 1:2 does not refer to the darkness we see in the night. But we'll get there, and I will explain what that darkness means. But for now, Genesis 1:2 was a prophecy. In Genesis 1:7, it says that God said, "Let there be the firmament to divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament. He divided the waters which were above the firmament from the waters which were below the firmament. In Genesis 1, 7 and 8, when God made the firmament to divide the waters from the waters, what are those waters? Genesis 1, 7, the waters there refer to the waters of life of the Spirit of God in heaven. The waters of life that John said he saw flowing out of the throne of God. The water of the Spirit, the waters of life in heaven. The Spirit of God hovered over the waters of life in heaven to separate the waters of natural life from the waters of spirit life. That is Genesis 1, 2. That's what Genesis 2 was prophesying. So Genesis 1, 2 prophesied of what we saw in Genesis 1, 7 later. The Spirit of God hovered over the waters of life in heaven to separate the waters of natural life from the waters of spirit life. And the Bible says he gathered all the waters of natural life and made land to appear, and he called the land earth, and the water he called seas. That was in Genesis 1:10. There the earth was made. After God hovered over the waters in heaven to separate the waters of natural life from the waters of spirit life. In Genesis 1:2, which was simply a prophecy. Genesis 1:2 has absolutely nothing to do with Genesis 1:1. Genesis 1:1 referred to the spirit, heaven and earth that were created in the beginning, but will come in the end. God started to make the spirit before he started to make the natural. God started to create the spirit in Genesis 1:1. He created the heavens and earth to come in the end. Genesis 1:1 was the very beginning of creation. God created the heavens and earth. Genesis 1:7, when God made the firmament to divide the waters from the waters, was the beginning of formation of the natural. Therefore, we see that in the beginning of creation, it came in two folds: the beginning of creation of the spirits and the beginning of formation of the natural. How do we know this? John 1 verse 1 and 2 give us a revelation, an insight into this. John 1:1 to 1:2 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Verse 2, the same was in the beginning with God. Now when you read John 1:1 and you read John 1:2, John 1:2 seems to be a repetition of John 1:1, or it looks like a redundant verse. It doesn't seem to have any meaning. No, it's because we haven't got the revelation. John 1:1 and 1:2 seek to explain to us that there were two beginnings: the beginning of the spirit and the beginning of the natural. Hence he said, in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That means in the very beginning of creation, the creation of the spirit was the Word, and the Word was with God. The same Word was with God in the second beginning when he was making the natural. John 1:2. The same was in the beginning. The same Word was in the beginning of the making of the natural. That's what John 1:2 seeks to explain. The beginning of creation of the spirit, Genesis 1:1, and the beginning of formation of the natural, Genesis 1:7, when God made the firmament to separate the waters from the waters. The firmament was the first natural thing God made. So Genesis 1:2 has been misinterpreted over the centuries to mean that God hovered over the waters of the sea. No. God hovered over the waters of life in heaven to separate the waters of natural life from the waters of spirit life. The waters of natural life, he gathered together to form this earth, so that natural life is on earth and earth only. The waters of spirit life, which is still in heaven, God created out of the waters of the spirit of life of God, the waters of life of the spirit of God, which are the waters above the firmament. God created the heavens, God created the church. Anything that was created of the spirit of God was created out of the waters of life of the spirit of God in heaven. So Genesis 1:2. Genesis 1:2 is now made clear that Genesis 1:2 was not an act of creation, but a prophecy. And Genesis 1:2, in fact, the problem of Genesis 1:2, what has led to the misinterpretation and confusion of Genesis 1:2 is that Genesis 1:2 has two parts. The first part, which says that, the first part of Genesis 1:2, which is that, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's the first part of that verse. It refers to the natural earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The first part is about the natural earth. But the second part of the same verse, that says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the water. The Spirit of God moved upon the waters. It was not on earth. That happened in heaven, where we have the waters of life in heaven. The second part of that verse is a spiritual scripture. It is about the Spirit. It's about heaven, which is spirit. It's a spiritual scripture, and cannot be compared with the first part, which is about the natural earth. We don't compare natural scriptures with spiritual scriptures. You can't combine a spiritual scripture with a natural scripture in one verse. Those who created chapters and verses in the Bible did not do us any good when it comes to this particular verse, because it is this mispresentation of the verse, the mispresentation of that verse, by combining the spirit part of it and the natural part of it together as one verse, that created the impression that God hovered over the seas here on earth, and which is not correct. God did not hover over the seas, because at the time of Genesis 1:2, the earth was not yet made. Rather, in Genesis 1:2, God hovered over the waters of life in heaven, the waters of life of God in heaven, to separate the waters of natural life from the waters of spirit life. The waters of natural life, he gathered to make the earth. That is why we have natural life on earth. There is no natural life anywhere in the whole universe. Scientists can't find any natural life, because according to this scripture, natural life is wholly, totally on earth. The spirit things in the Bible all came from the waters of spirits of God in heaven, the waters above the firmament. Anything God created came forth of the waters. God created the church out of the waters of this spirit life. God created the church out of the waters of the life of the Spirit of God in heaven. That is why we have in Genesis 1:21 that God created fishes, great whales from the waters, and winged fowl from the waters. The Spirit, as I explained in the previous video, the fishes represent the church, and the winged fowl represent ministering spirits, which were all created. They were created. The ministering spirits are part of the church. They were created together with the church in Genesis 1:21 from the waters of life of the Spirit of God in heaven. Fellow Christians, children of God, this is where I'll end my presentation today. I'm certain you have learnt and understood Genesis 1-2, which has been misinterpreted over the centuries. And I know that we are all blessed by this revelation. I'll see you in my next video. God bless you.